Okay. So played Black Panther Leadership again. I said I was going to return to this deck. I don't know. It's been almost a month or so now because we went through the whole campaign for Rise of Red Skull on normal, and then we tried to take down Ronin and Kree Fanatic last week on Expert, and I played Hawkeye. Or who did I play last week? It wasn't Hawkeye. Oh, I played Captain Protection last week. Yeah. But I wanted to return to this deck because I had built it the first time around, and I feel like I played the Iron Man. We talked about the Iron Man maybe being a bad fit, and so I wanted to be a little more proactive, and I wanted to be a little bit cheaper on the cost curve in general. But I still needed and required Power of Leadership in this deck. There was just enough instances. So let's talk about resources quick to play 2 Power of Leaderships. I would consider cutting down to one of these for another upgrade after today's games, and I'll tell you why. And then, of course, I have the standard Genius Strength Energy. I'm not sure that these will ever come out of a deck. I just don't know when you would ever get to a point, unless there's enough aspect resource generating cards to replace them for some reason. But let's talk about events. I played 2 Make the Calls. Deck is relying heavily on Shuri, like we talked about a few weeks back, and Shuri, she costs 2, and she basically just allows me to get upgrades out of my pile, which is what I want for all of the Black Panther upgrades. So once I get the Black Panther upgrades set up, I only have 4 targets then for Shuri, so she sort of loses some value at that stage in the game, and so it's kind of important to know when you're going to flip the script on when you're going to start recurring Shuris and when you're going to recur something else. But Make the Calls seems really good for recurring the other allies we'll get into here in a second. And then I did run 3 strengths in this deck, which if you remember right in my first iteration, I didn't have hardly any strengths. I think I played 1. I just think this card's too good.
That is factual.
and so from a perspective of like how you keep a turn going or get out of awkward hands, like strength is just going to be one of those ways to do that. And this deck can give you some awkward hands. I mean, today I had 2 turns where I just had draw 5 cards, all energy, draw 6 cards, all energy, or I drew like Ancestral Knowledge with no discard, and so those are just dead draws in those scenarios. And you have to know how to get out of that, and so strength is a way out, providing that you have allies in play. In both of my cases, I didn't have allies in play at that point. Like we had effectively lost all my allies. So I have a Hawkeye. You saw Hawkeye in our Kang video deliver the killing blow to Kang, but I like Hawkeye a lot because you can just set her up and use her in so many different ways. And with all my resource cards, like my Vibraniums and my energies, like I have 6 resource cards that are double.
She's a 2-cost ally, right? Like she's
insane. Yeah, just... but I also have 6 double resource cost cards, so like there's just a chance that
more than that, right?
No, because Power of Leadership doesn't count for her ability. 3. Yeah, plus then the
aren't there 5 Vibraniums?
1, 2, 3, just 3. 3 Vibraniums, 5 Wakanda Forevers.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, 6 cards out of your 40 are double icon cards. And as I was saying, as you get into the end of this game, Hawkeye just can use those cards for 2 damage and stay around on the board basically all the rest of the game.
Right. She's insane. She's so good.
Mariah Hill, again, just trying to dig out of bad draws. That's what I look at her as. I played a Squirrel Girl because I had no idea what Kang was going to give me. This to me is a villain dependent card. It's a 2-cost ally, which is fine. It's a good chump blocker, always going to be good, and the ability on it is sometimes good.
If you're playing this card, you're like playing these cards.
Right,
like you want the 2-cost allies.
Agreed.
For the strength
and then the Wonder Man comes in. I just think Wonder Man's good value for 2 to be able to attack like that. And again, going back to what I was saying, where you just end up with sometimes a bunch of cards in your hand you can't do anything with, discarding them to Wonder Man is fine. I tried U.S. Agent in here just because he's a 3-cost ally, and I wanted a 3-cost ally, and I felt like he might be, he might be able to do something. Number 1, I'll get into that with my upgrades, but he's fine. I may play Black Knight next time. Like there was a lot of tough in this instance, so like Black Knight would have been really good with his piercing.
I think that Agent is better unless specifically you know that the villain gets a lot of tough.
Right. I agree. again, just going back to dependency on what villain you're fighting. So if you know your villain you're going to go up against is like a Rhino, Kang in this case, I guess.
Red Skull.
Red Skull. Those villains all get a lot of tough cards, and so Black Knight may be better in this scenario. But everything else, like Agent, could tank Ultron drones and just wipe them out. Like I mean, he's got so many opportunities to be effective as a defender for you, and I think that's good. And then Falcon's just insane. I mean, what a value card.
He's good.
Yeah, I really like Falcon a ton. Wasn't as many treacheries because Kang introduces obligations. So in a lot of those cases, normally there would be treacheries where the obligations existed. But he was fine in this series. I think he removed 2 threat. But he's got good stat line, little less health than Spider-Man, but ultimately a good card.
He's just like, if you look at all the forecasts out, like you look at Iron Man, he has the same.
Yeah.
Like this is all the same.
Yeah.
But this is a much better text than Iron Man's box.
Yep.
The War Machine that was printed in Red Skull is also the same as this. His text box is interesting, but I've never played him.
Yeah. I mean I might explore this. I think these 2 cards in ally form are both cards that I look at and go, they might be villain dependent, but I mean, obviously, we're going to get a lot more allies, and so maybe that'll all change with more allies.
I like Falcon more than I like Iron Man or what's the other one? Vision.
Vision, yeah, I like Vision though. I do like Vision as a card. I think he's pretty solid. And then Nick Fury, again, just needed a way. And you saw in the Kang game, if you watched the Kang game, Nick Fury just essentially drew me 6 cards in a turn.
Nick is super stupid, and you have Nick with rapid response.
Right.
Like,
yep. So obviously no secrets here. We've got a single endurance. That's just because, I mean, if you watched our game, right away, Kang version, right out of the gate, 10'd me. Right? I have 11 health. So 10 health, he just 10'd me out of the gate. And so endurance is a quick way to get health back. It helps us recover essentially better because I can use endurance and then flip and recover for 3 with Panther, so that's a heal 6. That's 52% of my health or whatever it turns out to be. And then of course there's no secrets, 3 rapid responses. So the 3 rapid responses are here just to keep all of those guys in play longer and get their come into play effects, which every single one of them has a come into play effect except for Agent and Hawkeye. Well, Wonder Man kind of does it, but okay. He definitely doesn't. So sorry, I lied.
half of them have come.
Half of them don't. For my support play, I have a Triskelion, just to make sure I can play 4 allies. I tried out a team training today. This is new. I wanted to do a single team training just to see if the extra value life would help, and I think it mattered. It allowed me to be a little more
3 or 4 extra activations.
Yeah, it allowed me to be. It allowed me to be more proactive with my allies.
Well, all it says is like you get to tap them one more time.
Right.
Right. Like
right. Yeah.
And you did that a few times.
I did that. So I think this is a good addition. I don't know if it's a.
That is a card I'm like 50-50 to play in every leadership deck. It just depends on like whether I need to make a cut or not.
I think it's fine as a one-of.
I would never play more than one.
Right. I agree.
You can only have one in play.
Correct.
And you're probably not going to upgrade your partner with it.
No. It most likely will not aid your partner in any way.
Yeah.
Helicarrier, obviously, just a great card. And then an Avengers Mansion. Would I play Quinn Carrier in this list? I did it in the last iteration.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's
maybe.
Really good.
If I was playing solo, for sure. Like,
the only reason you didn't play it was because I had one this time, right? Like.
Yeah, I would maybe consider, like, because my resources are so heavy in this deck with the 3 Vibraniums on top of the 3 basics, I'd maybe consider cutting 1 power of leadership for a Quinn Carrier. I wouldn't want to replace power of leadership with a non-resource card.
Having the 3 Vibraniums plus these makes like the early Helicarrier / Quinn Carrier much easier.
Yes.
So I think it's even better in decks that have the additional resources.
But I think, when you look at it, basically Power of Leadership is paying for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that one doesn't count, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards.
Well, I also would count it towards Make the Call, because if you're playing Make the Call, you're going to
recurring
have to
leadership.
pay for one of these cards.
Sure.
Except, so like the only time it doesn't pay for making the call is if you're getting the nick.
Right.
So you can kind of count the make the call for these, but I don't know. There was a time when I was kind of down on these when I was playing like heavy basic decks.
Sure.
But I've come back up on them just because having the double resources, it's like having 2 cards in your hand. It's
I just think maybe one is still the right answer. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think it's very possible one's the right answer.
yeah. I mean, it's not necessary. Like, I mean, ultimately, you just playing Panther in any form. You just want to get like a bunch of permanents in play, so your deck is small for like recycling the Wakandas.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I totally want permanents in play. So replacing one power of leadership with a Quinn carrier also aids that process. So I think that it makes up for the potential loss of a resource in the deck. And again, I didn't really have a turn. I had one turn where I asked you for support in that whole encounter, where really what had happened is all of my resource cards had been stacked on the top of the deck, essentially. And so by the time I got to that point where I could do something powerful, I needed the resource cards, and my resource cards were not intermixed into the deck. They were sitting in a discard pile. So to me, like, that can happen. I think that's an anomaly. I'd like to play a bunch more games with this deck to make sure that's really not the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would have to. You only have 8 cards that are like actually blank.
Yeah.
So, assuming that your hand is like half these, you would think that you would need a 16 card pile,
right,
for that to be true. So I think it's probably an anomaly. Though you could end up with hands where you have like 4 of these and 2 of these and no discard pile.
I was really cognizant of like permanents in play versus what would be in the deck through this, because I was just kind of making a mental note while playing, and most of the time I had about a 30 card deck. So eight cards out of 30, and when you draw 6, is going to be pretty likely to be at least half your hand. No, it wouldn't be.
It'd be less than a third.
Right. So you'd have
you're between 1 and 2, which is like exactly how many of these you want to draw.
Sure. It just didn't seem to happen that way through most of the day.
Well,
that's
shuffle better.
This
is the shuffle bus.
Yeah,
you need to learn to shuffle.
It's just the randomness of it all, but which is why I think that if I replace it with a permanent resource, I would be okay. I'd also consider
I mean, the deck that I played last week when we played Unwinnable Red Skull was very similar to this, except I had less allies and less these type things and more of the just like 2-cost resource adders, because I was really heavy on thinning the deck.
Right.
So you're like 2-cost resource adders that just like sit out here after they're done even adding resources, like still thins your deck for the...
Right. I do think that there's a chance I need another upgrade in this deck. Not so much for Shuri as much as just like I got to a point towards the end of the game where there wasn't a lot of things I could do. Just other than playing Wakanda Forevers, which is what you want to be doing. But I think a more quasi-permanent upgrade in the deck or support in the deck will help it. And a reduction in events, I don't think it'd be the strength. I think I'd cut one more make for another permanent style card that could be around long term. I don't know what that would be right now. Maybe it's one of the enhanced or something, just something that I could get some value out of it early, but then like later it just sits on my board and doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, from this pile, Quinn Carrier is the obvious choice for sure, something like that. But
I'm assuming we would make that change immediately, and whether that's to pull and make the call for Quinn, I just don't think you need more resources in this deck. So I think that like cutting a single power for a Quinn Carrier would be a fine fit, and then I'm still thinking like one more event comes out for another upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, you can honestly cut an ally even from this pile.
Sure,
because there's an extra ally in there, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
So it'd be eight allies.
total.
Yep.
You can only have 4 of them in play at once.
Right.
So like you want to have 3 or 4 in play, but you could go down to 6 or whatever and still be okay.
There's just not a lot of upgrades that you really want to be playing. I mean, in leadership in particular, there's just not very many upgrades. It's a lot of events and
Yeah, like I mean, like I said, if you were comparing this to the deck that I played last week, it would just be like minus these guys. Well, still Nick Fury though. Don't forget him. Plus like some enhanced strengths or whatever, and then you're very similar to what I was playing, because like like you were saying, like you want low count of actions or whatever, but strength and number you still want because you just want like
Sure.
this gets you want things that get you closer to Wakanda, and that's
well, yeah, because
that's
strength
like
and
where you're at.
strength in numbers basically says that you're probably going to average out to a hand size of 7 across the game. So,
Well, it doesn't usually positive you cards. It just like cycles, because it's not very often that you like. I mean, sometimes you'll top deck it where you already have a board of 3 dudes, and then it's great, just insane.
right.
But most of the time, at least I find myself like playing 1 or 2 small allies.
Well, that's why I'm saying. So I'm saying with Panther, which you have a hand size of 5 in hero mode, you're probably going to get to make like you'll probably go +1. So that's why I'm saying you'll probably average out across a game at 7 cards a hand. Like,
well, even in the case where like I have like hand of this plus some cards,
sure,
I'm still minus because I'm like if I play both these, that's 6 cards
sure.
that I've spent, and then I draw 2, which is fine. And that's what you want to be doing.
I mean, specifically using Mariah, you're at -1 from this play,
right? And
then you go +1 here.
Well, you're not taking into account the cards you're discarding to play those cards, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Like you're spending 4 cards to play those 2/2 drops.
Sure.
So it's more like cycling usually. Though late game, it's crazy because if you have the board already established,
right,
then it's plus.
Right. Because it's just 1 card to plus.
It doesn't matter because you're not looking for like maximum number of cards in hand. You're just looking at seeing maximum number of cards from your pile and seeing whether or not they're titled Wakanda
Agreed.
Forever.
But I just think the way I think about that personally is I think about it as how many cards did I essentially get to play on a given turn, quote unquote, my hand, right? So this is my hand that's been dealt. How many cards do I get to play on hand? This deck probably averages about 7 cards on hand in hero mode and 8 in alter ego mode. That's what I'm saying. So it averages about 2 more cards than what you start with every turn. So, I mean, anytime you can increase your base hand size, it just enables you to play more cards.
I'm still pissed this guy's not Mystic.